companies were not blind to the danger. They began sponsoring much of the research into the risk, especially through the Saranac Laboratory in upstate New York. The industry expected to control the outcomes, as one sponsor explained. It's our further understanding that the results obtained will be considered the property of those advancing the required funds. This enabled them to suppress some of the results of a 1940 study where 81% of lab mice exposed to asbestos dust developed lung cancer. The warning signs couldn't slow the industry. Production tripled between 1900 and 1910, and in the late 1930s, asbestos was already massively popular. Asbestos has been used in production for at least 4,000 years, and before it became known as a notorious killer, it had a very different reputation. The surprisingly long human relationship with asbestos is history that deserves to be remembered. Asbestos is an umbrella term that refers to 6 different naturally occurring silicate minerals composed of thin, fibrous crystals. The fibers are made up of even smaller pieces called fibrils, which can be as small as a single micron in length. The most commonly used type is called chrysolite, or white asbestos, which makes up about 95% of the asbestos in most products, but a number of other kinds are recognized, including brown and blue asbestos. It functions naturally as an electric insulator. It is highly resistant to heat, it's chemically inert, and it strengthens other materials when mixed. In Asia, the Han Dynasty general Long Qi was said to have a suit of asbestos cloth that he would wear to special occasions. He would refuse tea until it was spilled on him, and then, feigning anger, have the clothes thrown into the fire, where they would come out clean. In the same period, asbestos became associated with something unexpected: the salamander. The salamander was poorly understood in antiquity, but it had for centuries had a connection with fire. Some medieval alchemists even declared the salamander a fire elemental. As early as the 4th century BC, Aristotle connected the amphibian with fire, and Pliny said the creatures were so cold they could extinguish fire. The Jewish Talmud also mentions the salamander, claiming it is a product of fire. The Greeks and Romans detailed the mining of asbestos, but by the Middle Ages, society seems to have forgotten its origins. It functions naturally as an electric insulator. It is highly resistant to heat, it's chemically inert, and it strengthens other materials when mixed. In Greek, the substance we now call asbestos was originally called amiantos, meaning undefiled, because it showed no mark it was thrown into a fire. The Greek word asbestos actually referred to quicklime, but the Roman magistrate, Pliny the Elder, misused the word in his natural histories to refer to the incombustible material, which helped to popularize the name. In its modern use, the word asbestos was first used in the 1600s. Use of asbestos, however, goes back much further than that. Austrian Ludwig Hatzcheck created fire-resistant building panels that could be both thinner and stronger, which led to hundreds of products based on his invention, including asbestos tiles, corrugated panels, and ceiling moldings. The fireproof material caused a sensation and was hailed as a miracle mineral that could save thousands of lives in an era that lived in fear of building fires. Asbestos was perfect for the industrial age. It was versatile and easily added to other materials. It was mixed into cement and wood to create fireproof ships, and included in all kinds of plastic items for increased strength and as a binder. In 1897, a doctor in Austria attributed a patient's breathing problems to breathing asbestos, and an 1898 report by the British government cited widespread damage and injury of the lungs due to the dusting surrounding of the asbestos mill. The first confirmed death from asbestosis was reported in England in 1906 by Dr. Montague Murray. Murray performed an autopsy on a 33-year-old patient and found large amounts of asbestos fibers in his lungs. Across Europe, other reports of deaths from fibrosis were reported. Insurance companies were aware of the dangers too, and as early as 1908, they decreased coverage and increased premiums for workers in the factories that used asbestos. Still, the myth of the salamander persisted. Even Leonardo da Vinci thought that the salamander had no internal organs and survived off fire alone. In the early modern period, scientists turned to the utility of asbestos. Research into the material exploded, starting in the 17th century. By 1700, the Royal Society had published 8 reviews and letters on the mineral, and in 1727, the first full volume on asbestos was published, followed quickly by 2 others. New applications seemed to appear every day. Italians made asbestos paper and later asbestos banknotes. Benjamin Franklin carried an asbestos coin purse with him in his youth so that the money would never burn a hole in his pocket. He sold it in 1724 to the eventual benefactor of the British Museum. Giovanni Aldini, known for his experiments using electricity to move the muscles of cadavers, invented a line of fireproof clothing for firefighters in the early 1800s, which became popular in places like Paris and Geneva. Asbestos stage curtains were credited with saving lives in theater fires, and others suggested making an indestructible book of eternity of asbestos paper. Meanwhile, the use of asbestos in the United States actually reached its peak in the post-war years. In Europe and Japan, asbestos was used widely in the construction necessary to rebuild war-torn nations, while in the U.S., the practical uses of asbestos meant it became an integral part of thousands of products. Put into brake pads in cars and elevators, used in hair dryers, air conditioners, electric insulation, fake snow, including that used on the set of The Wizard of Oz, surgical thread, irons in the filters of Kent Micronite cigarettes, and even as an abrasive in toothpaste. But the consensus that the product was dangerous continued to grow. Multiple reports connected to occurrences of several kinds of cancers. And in 1964, Dr. Irving Sellicott presented findings that deaths at a New Jersey asbestos factory were 25% higher than would be expected statistically. Arab scholars more often thought it was the cut feathers of an exotic bird, while some Chinese authors described a kind of rodent that lived in volcanoes. British polymath Sir Thomas Browne later suggested that asbestos has taken on the metaphorical name of salamander wool, but that the people started to take them too literally. In the 13th century, Marco Polo learned of asbestos mining in Asia, and he wrote that the real truth is that the salamander is no beast, as they allege in our part of the world, but is a substance found in the earth. Still, the myth of the salamander persisted. Even Leonardo da Vinci thought that the salamander had no internal organs and survived off fire alone.